Hey everybody, Shawn here from the Automation Blog and School, and in this episode of the Automation Podcast, I meet up with Victor Parangelo from Prosoft Technologies to get a detailed look at their product, the Data Logger Plus.
Vic, thank you for coming on the Automation Podcast. I'm excited to have Prosoft on. I use Prosoft a lot in my career, going all the way back to the early '90s. So really excited to have you guys on. I know we talked in the pre-show about a lot of different things, but before you jump into your presentation talking about a unique product, which I didn't even know about, the Data Logger Plus from Prosoft, I would like you to just tell our audience a little bit about what your role is at Prosoft today.
So hi, everybody. I'm Vic Parangelo. I am the regional manager for the U.S. Northeast and also a field specialist for Prosoft Technology. So basically based out of New York, I roam the countryside working with customers on applications, solving communications problems. Prosoft's tagline is Prosoft's tagline is where automation connects. So anytime you've got multiple disparate systems trying to talk to each other, Prosoft is usually involved.
That's awesome. And that's true. You to just look at your products, you guys have so many different, but today we're going to focus in on the Data Logger Plus. So I'll just let you take it away.
Sure, thanks. So today I'd like to talk to you all about Prosoft's Data Logger. So if anyone out there is familiar with using a historian, I'm going to show you a simpler way to basically collect, store, retrieve, publish, and distribute OT process data to the IT world. So quick little background on me. I'm a child of the 60s and 70s. I was born and raised in New York, and a lot of my friends' parents actually were engineers for Grumman. So at a very early age, I was exposed to things like the LEM, or the F-14, the A-6, the A-10, which were all built here on Long Island. I began flying at age 12. I went to the Air Force Academy, got an engineering degree, went to flight school. And after about 10 years of flying at Mach 2 with my hair on fire, I settled into an engineering career as a system integrator. And that's what I've done for the past 20 years or so before joining Prosoft. I designed and deployed custom automation. I've worked on hundreds of automation applications and process applications going back to like 1991. So the market for data historians continues to expand, and you can credit that to the growing appetite among process manufacturers for advanced analytics. If you go to the Prosoft website, I have a shot of that here, you'll see we have over 450 products that we manufacture and sell, but today I'm only going to talk about one. That's the Data Logger. So the Prosoft Data Logger, which its part number is PLX51 DL plus 232. As I'm talking, sometimes I'll say Data Logger, sometimes I'll say the PLX51. I'm sorry, I kind of use them interchangeably. But this product is not a historian. It has a few nicknames I've heard over the years. I've heard it called a poor man's historian. I've heard it called the OT-IT connector. And now I have to warn you, the Data Logger Plus is a newer version of the plain old Data Logger. Both the old version and the Plus version both have the same data recording capability, but what makes this new one a Plus version is how much easier it is to get the data out, because it was a bit of a challenge before. But physically, they're identical, and from a recording capability standpoint, they're identical. With the standard old Data Logger, you had to physically walk up to it with a laptop, plug into the Data Logger with an RS-232 cable, and using some special software provided by Prosoft, you would extract a CSV file from the Data Logger into your laptop. I know, it was barbaric. But some people still use the standard Data Logger to this day because that's good enough for them, and it got the job done. But with the Data Logger Plus, things got serious. So as you can see here, the Data Logger sits locally at the machine. Now it can log up to 200 tags simultaneously from different devices. It can hold up to 16.7 million time-stamped records, and it can record as fast as every 50 milliseconds. So that's 20 times a second. And it supports REST API. So what you would do is you would connect it to its host controller or controllers here by way of Ethernet IP, BF1, Modbus serial, or Modbus TCP IP. That's the input side here on the left. And then on the right, you see how the data is pulled out. So in addition to the old way of using the Prosoft software and a cable, now you don't have to physically be there with a laptop and a cable. You can trend data from a web browser, and because the Data Logger Plus supports REST API, third-party interfaces can use custom scripts to get to the data. Now this starts to crack open the door to automating the process of getting OT process data into IT's hands. So now here's the question. How do you like your data? How would you like to get the data? If you look on the right, you'll see this bronze to platinum ranking. Now this is my terminology, this isn't Prosoft terminology, but basically what I'm going to show you here is sort of the level of sophistication and savviness of the data integrity that you can get out of the data logger. So if we start at the top here with what I'm calling the bronze, this would be like that old way that I mentioned before, manually extracting it with a cable and a laptop. You have to be there. You save a CSV file and you do whatever you want with it. The next step up in sophistication would be to view and trend some of the tags using a web browser, because the DL Plus has a web server. So simple line graphs, a couple of variables, no analytics. But in this silver, some of the work is done for you, right? The built-in web server allows you to quickly visualize data and export a subset of the data to a CSV file. Moving down to the gold, now you're talking about it has integrated support for JSON, which allows a user to write a REST API to automate data retrieval. The customer has to write the RESTful API and then export the data to a dashboard, let's say a CRM or something similar. And then there's the platinum. Now, this is just a whole new level. So with the platinum, the REST API is already done for you. You might be familiar with Excel Reporter by SciTech. So this has a native driver to interface to the Data Logger Plus to get the data, visualize the data, create reports, and then distribute the reports. And the Excel Reporter can save the retrieved data for future use. So again, by comparison, on the one extreme, we had just a simple CSV file that we had to retrieve and work on. Now, we can remotely retrieve the data and do almost no work. So first, it collects the data. The PLX51 collects the data from local or remote devices using Ethernet IP or Modbus, and it makes it available over a local network or from a cloud service. And the volume of data that can be controlled, it's controlled by using time and value deadbands. Then it can synchronize the data. So Excel Reporter's Prosoft connector will periodically synchronize all new data in the PLX51 to a database of your choice, Microsoft SQL Server or MySQL. And for online applications, the transfer uses secure methods with no exposure to the internet, so there's no public IPs. Then we produce reports. The stored data is used to create out-of-box templates or custom reports using Excel Reporter's Design Studio or Microsoft Excel plugin. And I know it's tough to see in this picture, but there's just like a ton of canned reports that you don't have to do anything except pick the format. So the reports are produced automatically using Excel Reporter's built-in scheduler, or they can be created on demand from devices supporting a web browser like a tablet or a phone. And then, bam, reports can be distributed as workbooks, encrypted PDFs, web pages, CSV files, XML files by email, SMS text, FTP server, local or network printers and file servers. So you'd say, well, okay, why do you want to do this? Why would you do this? Basically, you are going to gather raw process data from local and remote devices and turn it into actionable information. With the push of a button, you connect, pull the data, publish the data, and distribute the data. This is a far cry from walking up to the machine and getting a CSV file. Do I still have you guys?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm listening.
Okay. Okay.
I get. There's a lot of things I'm waiting. There's a lot of questions and things I want to talk about. But keep going, please.
Okay. So I have three simple examples. All right. Three simple examples. So example one is a factory floor example. Okay. So you don't have to read this. I'll walk you through it. Factory floor, right? The factory manager wants to replace all those pencil chart recorders on the floor with a more updated system, but he's got requirements, right? It's got to be easy to use. He doesn't want to change his existing control system. It has to be easy to retrieve the data and to understand it. He is not an IT guy. And then he has to store the data for future use. So the Data Logger Plus would go, if you see in the picture here, a Data Logger Plus will go hang on the machine, right? And it'd be connected to their corporate network. Excel Reporter would be living on a PC somewhere or a server in the corporate network, and the two would be connected, and then you would retrieve the data, report, and publish the data. So it's as simple as this. The machine's here, the data logger is living at the machine, connected to the machine on one of these ways.
And just for our audio-only audience, the connection ways are DF1 serial, Ethernet IP, Modbus RTU, and Modbus TCP/IP.
Yes, yes. And then if someone creates a REST API driver or uses one pre-canned from Excel Reporter, they would get that data to their server. That's one simple example. Here's example number two. This is a remote example. So the village has, this is let's say a water wastewater application. The village has 5 pumping stations, and there's a guy driving around basically recording on a piece of paper the data from each of the sites. Just based on EPA guidelines, they can't do that anymore. So they're looking for a low-cost way to meet the EPA's regulatory requirements. So with a combination of a data logger and Prosoft PDN, this is a remote access capability that I'm not going to get into detail with here, but basically a remote cellular or wired connection to those sites. It's an always-on connection. So now the Excel Reporter, which let's say lives back at the SCADA or some central master location, it has continuous connection, always-on connection to all those 5 sites, in which case it acts as if it's like right in the building with it at that point, and the guy doesn't have to drive around anymore.
And let's just and I may be stealing your thunder here, but this is a secure connection. This isn't just going through the internet and visiting public sites, right?
Correct. It's a secure managed service by Prosoft. Now, I'm not really getting into the details of it in this talk, but it is the method of connecting the data logger, which is out at a remote site, back to the SCADA or to the server where Excel Reporter lives.
And this is good
where you want the data.
If your company doesn't already have secure VPN access to all the sites, which a large company would, but a wastewater treatment plant would not, then this is the way to avoid having to hire an IT department to put this all together for you. And we may maybe come back and cover this in a future episode of the podcast. But
Sure.
just, I know the listeners can't see the pictures, which kind of make it very, very obvious that it's a secure connection through the cloud. So I just wanted to point that out. But go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it is the Prosoft Connect. There's 2 versions of Prosoft Connect. One we call SRA, which is secure remote access. So that is an on-demand connection, right? I'm here in New York. I want to connect to a machine in Australia just to look at it, do what I have to do, get in, get out. That's secure remote access. We can do that via Prosoft Connect. But what Prosoft Connect can also do is an always-on connection, which would be more appropriate for what we're talking about here with these pump stations and the water utility, where there's multiple remote sites that need to be always connected all the time. You're not going to tunnel in and get out. You're going to tunnel in and stay connected forever to all of them. And that's what Prosoft calls PDN, Persistent Data Network. So, but yeah, we could talk about that at another time. The point here is that that connection through the cloud, this secure, managed, simple connection through the cloud allows the IT or the server or the Excel reporter, whatever it is that wants the data, to access it via the cloud from the data logger, which is pulling it and recording it from the process machine. So, yeah, I wish everybody could see this schematic. So then I got one more last example, right? This is a SaaS or a MaaS type application, machine as a service, right? This OEM builds wrapping machines, and he wants to monitor the machine performance for his sake. Maybe he gives the machine away, but he sells the wrapping material. So he wants to monitor how much use what the machine is doing. He can monitor for multiple reasons. It could be just for preventive maintenance. It could be keeping the customer honest, that the customer is buying his wrapping material. Right? If he's selling so many rolls of wrapping material, but he's monitoring the machine that says it ran 10x more rolls than the customer purchased. I'm giving a sort of a cynical view of it, but there's a lot of ways this can be used. It could be just something as simple as a service contract, that he's going to monitor the machine, for uptime to make sure that he can do any sort of preemptive maintenance while he's monitoring the machine to make sure that it doesn't go down. So similar concept here. Right, there's the machine here on the bottom with a data logger hanging on it locally to a remote access gateway through the cloud back to, he sells these machines all over the world. One quick example, I have a customer that built industrial chillers. I mean, massive chillers, the type you would see hanging off the side of an ice skating rink building. And they offered a variety of different services. They would say, we can remote troubleshoot it from Canada to anywhere on the planet, or we can be permanently connected to it and monitor it, 100% of the time, depending on the severity of what the customer needed. So the concept is the same here as before. You've got these remote, scattered anywhere on the planet assets, but the data retrieval is centralized somewhere else, and you need access to it, whether you access straight to the machine or through a data logger, which is continuously recording everything. So that's the concept of the Data Logger Plus. It's simple. It is not a historian per se, but the combination of Prosoft's Data Logger Plus in conjunction with Cytek's Excel Reporter, it's leaning in that direction. So there are basically, in all these examples, I think this is my last slide. There's pretty much three products that I was talking about. There's the data logger, right, that we've been talking about. And then from a remote connectivity point of view, you can access that data logger, which could be, at an asset geographically dispersed anywhere on the planet that has either wired internet or cellular coverage. And you would access it via one of these two gateways, either the cellular gateway or the PLX35 wired gateway. And I think, like you said, that might be a good maybe follow-on topic as to the details of how that works.
Yeah, definitely. Would you mind if this is your last slide? And first of all,
It
for
is.
the audio audience, these are manufactured, like I think all of your products, right, in North Carolina. Is that correct?
Yes, everything is manufactured in Mooresville, North Carolina, which is about a half hour outside Charlotte.
Which is pretty awesome. So if we could go back to the bronze, silver, gold, platinum slide, and the reason I want to go back to that is I want to talk about the silver for a moment. There are going to be, and before we even go into that, I need you to share with us a ballpark list price for this product. Like what is to get one of these? What is not what your distributor is going to sell it to you, but what would be your public list price on it?
The public list price on the standard data logger is roughly $1,000.
Okay.
Don't quote me plus or minus 100. And on the Data Logger Plus is about 1,500.
All right, so you're looking at $1,500. If you wanted to put in a historian system, you're over $10,000, right? Now, I know there's a lot of ways to do that for under 10,000, but once you say the word historian, it's almost impossible to get away with a historian system under 10 grand. Okay, even the less expensive products, you still need to buy a PC or a server, or there's all this hardware, or this. So what we have here is something in that $1,500 range that you can mount on a DIN rail. Looks like it's DIN rail mounting.
It is.
And you can
Right there.
connect up to 200 tags, 16 million records. And for the person who's just starting out, they're like, I need something to be able to capture data at a reasonably fast rate. 50 milliseconds is about as fast as a panel view or RS view or factory talk view would do. So a reasonably fast rate. I need to collect this data, and I need to be able to look at it quickly. You have this what we call the silver option, which is really just using the Data Logger Plus, the DL Plus, with its built-in web page. And so now you have something that goes on a DIN rail. I know Prosoft, just from my experience with them, going all the way back to the early 90s, they have great tech support. I've never had a problem getting an answer out of them. So you can put this on a DIN rail and tell it what, configure it, tell it what addresses on what devices you want. And then you can go and look at it. Let's say there was the plant went down, the machine went down last night. You can go in and say, okay, I want to look at the data from, maybe 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. and see it on your screen. Maybe you can save that to a CSV file to share with somebody. I think that there's a really strong case there for somebody who doesn't want to buy a PC, just wants to put something in the enclosure. Now, this is industrial rated, like all your products, I'm assuming. So they just want to
Yes.
put this in the enclosure and set this up and have just something that is in their realm. They don't have to get IT involved. They don't have to get get a server. They don't have to do any of that. And I think that's an extremely powerful thing. And it's not something, I think last time I checked, this was years ago, but the Historian module from Rockwell, which only goes with a Logix controller, that thing was like starting at $5,000. You know what I'm saying? And so this is definitely has a spot, in my opinion, on that side. Now, I want to talk about pairing it with Excel Reporter. Now, I probably should have Excel Reporter guys on. I've been working with them before they were even connected with Rockwell. I was working they're locally here in Massachusetts, so I think they're in Waltham. But in any case, um, because we had a lot of wastewater type customers and integrators, I got to know them and I was happy to play a little part in getting them connected with Rockwell and getting them to work with Factory Talk View. And they just have a phenomenal product if you like Excel. And they can do Excel in the background and kind of, give you the PDFs like you said and the web pages and whatnot. But a great company, a local company, in the US, right here in Massachusetts, but a great company. They're at all the shows. You've probably seen them at a show, Automation Fair or something. And what they can do is pretty awesome. And it's a if you like Excel as a reporting system, then the Excel report is definitely worth a look. So for under $5,000, right? You're getting the hardware and the software. You get a complete solution. And again, I mean, if you want OSI Pi, it's what a phenomenal product that is. You've got to have the budget for it, but it is a phenomenal product, right? And I've used it a lot, the Rockwell Historian version of it a lot. But if you're looking for something simpler, I think this definitely fits a couple of roles, right? And I should say the Excel Reporter works great with the Factory Talk products and other products from other companies as well. It's not just it doesn't just work with Rockwell, works with anything. So with that
But sort of
said,
like what you had just mentioned, you're right. If you were talking about using the Prosoft Data Logger Plus without Excel Reporter, then you can get anywhere from the gold, the silver, the bronze here. The
yeah,
Excel Reporter only comes in with the platinum. So you could do that. You can what did I call it? You can export to dashboards or to a CRM, things like that, and get fancier sort of reporting one step shy of going into Excel Reporter, but then they just blow the doors open with all their out of the box canned reports.
Yeah, and if you have some IT guys who are very good with SQL Server, whether it's MySQL or Microsoft SQL Server, and they don't have a problem with JSON, then getting really once you get the CSV file on your computer, importing it into either MySQL or SQL Server is child's play. It truly is. There's a wizard. You just set up an import routine. And we used to actually do this in our demos because the old factory talk or RSV would log in CSV, right? And we also have CSV logging built into the controllers and built into the panel views and whatnot from Allen Bradley centric side, but almost all PLCs do that today in HMIs. So getting that and bringing it into a database so if you already have some expertise in your plant on that, then getting that thank God it's a CSV file because it is super easy to get that and bring that into either Excel or a SQL database. So in any case, it's I think it's a great solution for those those use cases. And again, it's not going to replace a historian. You've been very clear to say it's not a historian, and it's not Rockwell's Vantage Point. That's going to be 100% GUI web interface, but I think it's definitely has a spot and that's why when you were talking about it, I'm like, yeah, we got to get you on the podcast. I think this definitely has a spot for certain applications. So with all that said, is there anything else you'd like to cover in this episode of the Automation Podcast?
No, just I guess real quick, where I see now, I'm speaking from the U.S. Northeast and sort of Eastern Canada perspective. I don't personally, I don't sell these to the world the way Prosoft does, but where I get my hands dirty the most with the Prosoft Data Logger is number one by far, water, wastewater remote sites, right? It's like, I guess I could have added another nickname to it. It's like a cheap insurance policy to have one of these sitting out at a pump station so that when the comms go down and then the comms come back up and you're not using DNP3, that you have the access to the missing data, right, to fill the holes in the data. That I think that's by far the number one. I see orders come in 50, 100 units at a time because they're revamping a municipality and putting one of these at each new pump or lift station. That's number one. And the number two thing I see is, again, for the utilities, I shouldn't say utilities, for the facilities that don't have, I think you mentioned it before, like IT savviness. They don't have an IT department. They can't handle like buying and maintaining a server on site. Some of these guys do more of a forensic analysis. You just mentioned before, hey, something went wrong last night at 11 o'clock. We'll pull the data, see what happened. So they're not actively monitoring it. They're not distributing reports, but they do know if something goes wrong, they can look back and see what changed.
And that's the beauty of it. They don't have to do anything to the HMI. They don't have to do anything to the PLC. So this is a great system. They just plug it into the network. They configure it and then not disturb it. And a lot of times these systems, right, in these facilities, they're sent in by OEMs, and the OEMs don't really discourage them making any changes. They don't want them loading code into the controller to record data to a CSV file, right? They don't want them trying to edit the panel view plus or whatever they're using to, so this is like, hey, I'm not touching my OEM's equipment. This is just an add-on. I'm just clicking it on the DIN rail and I'm going to tell it what tags to grab, and you don't have to step on anybody else's toes to get this installed and running. So I definitely think for maintenance departments this is something that could definitely be of big interest because it gives them and you know what, if they find it successful, they may upgrade later to a historian or a larger system down the road, right? They may add in if they need some real great reports. If management's like, wow, this is good info, we got to get these into some nice reports and get them automated, well, then they add in an excellent reporter later. But it allows somebody, $1,500 or thereabouts is definitely within the budget for like a data collection project. So it's a good first step, I think. And I'm glad you came on the show to tell us about it. Really appreciate you coming on, Vic. Vic, would you mind going to your first slide with your contact info and maybe just tell the folks, like, even if they're not in the Northeast.
I lost it. I just lost my slide. You have it back?
Yeah, I can see it. Yep.
Okay, good. Right. So I'm basically in the U.S. Northeast and Eastern Canada, but we've got other folks scattered around the country and around the world. I'm happy to get you in touch with them. You can contact me. I'll be happy to work with you or point you in the right direction. You could go to the Prosoft website, www.psft.com. You could find somebody local, but by all means, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to help you and hand you off to your local Prosoft person.
And for those audio listeners, this is the first slide. So if you need to get his contact info, just pull up the video version and look at the first slide. His info's all on there. Vic, I really want to thank you for coming on the Automation Podcast. Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and tell us all about the Data Logger Plus that you guys have.
I'm happy to do so. Thank you so much for having me. By the way, I'm on LinkedIn too. You can find me, Vic Parangelo, on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Another way to find me.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I want to thank Vic for taking time out of his busy schedule to come on the show and bring us all up to speed on Prosoft's Data Logger Plus. With that said, if you enjoyed the show and you're watching the video edition, please give us a like and a sub. And if you're listening to the audio-only edition, please consider giving us a 5-star review. It really does help us reach a wider audience and find new vendors to come on the show. And thank you to all of you who are already done so. Really appreciate that. With that said, you can follow me and optionally support the show over at automation.locals.com. And of course, you'll always find all of my training courses over at theautomationschool.com. With that said, I want to wish you all a very happy, safe, and healthy week. And until next time, my friends, peace.